When I was working with the 4th Marine Division, this one colonel was saying, so we take our Marines and we put them into war and we're like, go kill, go be a war fighter, go kill, be aggressive, like all bets are off. Now go home, be a dad, be a husband, behave yourself, and then go back to war. And
all kind of focusing around service and therapy towards first responders and vets, right?
Absolutely.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more, like how did you get into this? Why do you work with veterans, first responders?
Yeah, sure. So my first sort of inkling to go into counseling was when I worked during a summer during college for Austin Sunshine Camp, which is for underprivileged kids. So my parents had decided that
Funny you just said that.
Mhm.
I just had the president of Austin Sunshine
Did you?
Camps here.
The Young Men's Business League and all that? Yeah. Fantastic.
Those are my
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So it's like summer between my sophomore and junior year, and I'm broke and I need a job.
Mm-hmm.
So they give me this job. It was the first year they had the camp on Lake Travis for teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So signed up to do that and loved it. And my parents had decided I should be a lawyer. So I was actually pre-law and undergrad. And I'm having this amazing summer with these kids and watching this transformation in a survival camp atmosphere. And the camp nurse was like, you could become a counselor and do this for a living. And I was like, sign me up, right? So I changed my majors to psychology, sociology, double major. And then went to grad school, was 3 months away from finishing my master's degree at UT. And that's when the ATF raided the Branch Davidian compound in Waco. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was a horrible event and a horrible standoff and a horrible finish. And it was all bad. But the day that they raided the compound and that was on the news, it was a Sunday, I was like, that's it. That's I want to go help people like the ATF. Like I wanted to go to Waco. I wasn't qualified because I hadn't even finished grad school.
Right.
But I knew that day my calling was to go help public safety and military. Mm-hmm. And so I went to school the next day and told my professors that I was going to do such things, and they told me I was crazy. So
Really?
Here I am 31 years later, just as crazy as the rest of you. And
Right.
So I hit the ground running. My whole career has been dedicated to law enforcement, fire, EMS, communications, and military.
Okay.
I love it.
That's beautiful. Just
Right.
because it was a breath of fresh air to meet somebody like you who has dedicated their life to doing so. And of course, you writing the books, and then we have a mutual friend that put us in contact with an amazing gentleman that's been on this podcast. And it's first of all on my end, getting involved with law enforcement is not ever anything I envisioned myself ever doing just because of my past. Mm-hmm. But when I was able to start sitting down with them, like it became very important to me of like I've done so much. I've been on the other side of that law so many times where now it's time to be on this side and start seeing what value I can add and how can I help the situation.
Absolutely.
But the closer I've gotten with these officers, it's mind-blowing the amount of stuff they have to deal with on a daily basis, never having the chance to process this, and not to mention the amount of negativity that they receive from the media or the outside and stuff like that. And it's just like, why would anybody with good character or anything want to go into this job field when it's you do know right and stuff like that? And just the more stories I hear, it's just it blows my mind.
Absolutely. And to them it's a calling, and so they do it,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them get to that point where they're just surviving, just waiting to get to retirement, and it's unfortunate it has to get to that point. It's amazing to me how the media and a lot of the public just views them as like robots or psychopaths, and these are human beings. They're husbands and wives, and their sons and daughters, their parents. And, they go home and the vest comes off, and now they're switching into family mode, and we just expect them to turn it on, turn it off. It's like when I was working with the 4th Marine Division, this one colonel was saying, so we take our Marines and we put them into war and we're like, go kill, go be a war fighter, go kill, be aggressive, like all bets are off. Now go home, be a dad, be a husband, behave yourself, and then go back to war. And he's like, you can't do that. Like the brain doesn't do that. And our law enforcement people have to do this shift after shift, week after week, year after year.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what it was like coming home from when I deployed overseas. You're prepared for everything overseas because, for the most part, because that's where you're going and what you're walking into. Where the wheels fell off is when we came back. Mm-hmm. And then you see all these guys, myself included, extreme behaviors, taking alcohol, drugs, everything like that to extreme amounts and stuff like that. And it's like, you asked us to go over here and do all this, and we're on this heightened adrenaline rush this whole time and all that. And then you come back to regular everyday thing, and you don't think that's still going to be like that. It's not this switch that you could just turn on and off like
Right,
that.
right. To me, it's like the perfect thing to do with you guys in combat would have been to give you guys like a 2-month decompression period to start to work through the demons, to come off the glucose, the adrenaline and cortisol of that constant fight or flight response that you maintained over there, and to give you that transition period. I know everybody just wants to get home, but to me, it's like having like a midpoint where you could just decompress for a couple of months, get your health issues addressed, get mental health issues addressed. That would have been the answer.
Yeah.
But of course, that costs money, and they're not going to pay for that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So then we get in trouble, and then they kick us out.
Right. Exactly.
But not saying I didn't deserve to be kicked out. You know what I mean? I made my own choices, and I own those. But I think about other people that happens to, and it ended well for me in the end. There's a lot of people that it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
What is so with your work, like, what do you get from it?
Well, so I always say that I have the best career ever. Like, I do. I go to work and I help the most amazing people get well. And to me, as much trauma as I deal with, people ask all the time, well, how do you deal with all this, like hearing all this stuff all the time? And to me, it's like one person heals and they spread their wings and they fly. They go back to work, or they maintain their career, or they get healthy, or they have a happy life, or they're doing well with their family, or whatever the goals and the accomplishments are. I see people every day who are very motivated to get well. And that's a good fit for me because I'm a little bit of a type A personality. So like, we hit the ground running, we go to work, I give lots of homework, people do their homework. And every time someone launches and does well, that just motivates me to keep going. I would last half a day in an environment like hospice. I couldn't do that. But give me the worst trauma and I can help you through that. And to me, that it's one of my former patients, police officer up in Killeen, she said, it's really odd how much you were made for this specific niche and how you found it. And I was like, it is a little eerie. And she's like, it is very eerie. She said, you're just created to do this. And so I think it's the right fit, the right personality, but I love what I do. And seeing people heal and grow and maintain their careers and get to retirement and do all the good things, to me, it's the best thing ever.
Right. What are some, so I mean, I'm definitely no doctor, and I don't know what like your sessions are like and stuff like that, but what are, we've had some discussions on, addiction and stuff like that. What do you try to push your, the people that you work with? Obviously you're trying to help with problems there in the office, but what's your advice to them outside of the office? Do you try to get them involved in exercise, or like what do you prescribe for all that?
Absolutely. We talk to our clients all the time about like, SAR therapy is like 1 or 2 hours a week. And what are you doing with the other, hundreds of hours every week, right? And so the whole point is that this is a catalyst for change, but the change is what you do with it. And so we do give assignments. We talk about resilience. So resilience starts simple with hydration, nutrition, rest, and exercise. And then we get into your family, your faith, your friends, and your hobbies, your life outside the job. And so people who have like really bad resilience, I will often, I like tangible, like objective goals. So I will say, can you this week add 8 ounces of water to your day, 100 steps on the Fitbit, and 30 minutes of sleep at night to your normal regimen? And then we're going to go to 16 ounces of water a day, 200 steps on the Fitbit, and an hour of sleep. And what happens is people start to feel better, right? We definitely talk about exercise. When people are stressed, when they're traumatized, a lot of times the first thing they give up is exercise. The worst thing you can do to your mental health is give up exercise. So we don't want them to necessarily just go join a gym. But like one of my former patients, also a police officer, wasn't working out at all, had a lot of trauma. We dealt with the trauma. It was a bunch of bad calls involving kids. We did EMDR on those calls. He responded really well. But then it was like time to get back to the exercise. And he said, well, how do you want me to start this? And I said, what do you like to do that involves movement? And he said, I like to walk my dog. And I said, excellent. This week, can you walk your dog twice, 15 minutes each time? And he goes, that's it? And I said, that's it. And he goes, that's doable. I said, that's the point. Because if you join a gym, you're going to go twice. You're going to work out too hard the first time. You're going to be sore and you're going to get frustrated and you're going to give up. Yeah. And so then the next week he walked his dog 3 times. Then he walked his dog 4 times. You see a pattern here, right? Yeah. So the week he walked his dog 4 times, he went in his gym and he dusted off the rowing machine and he got on it for 20 minutes. And I said, tell me why you did that. He said, because now I'm craving movement. And I said, Now there's no stopping you. So fast forward today, he's a total beast. He's in the gym like every day, but he didn't start out that way. He started by walking his dog twice. And so I like to ease people back into it so they won't fail. To me, the worst thing we can do is push someone to do something that injures them or discourages them, and then we're lost. And so, and then maybe a year later they'll try again. But to me, that's not the way to get into this.
Right. Absolutely. It's so refreshing to hear somebody that's educated, that's a doctor, sitting there talking about exercise and the benefit that it makes. Because I can tell you, almost every doctor I've ever been to never mentioned it to me, and it's what absolutely transformed my life. You know, there's other factors in there that did it, but movement was one of the biggest ones. And so all the clients that I work with, or people in recovery that I work with, like, that is what I try to get them to do. And that's exactly like you're saying it happened for your client. That's how it happened for me. I didn't wake up ready to run 100 miles or do any of that, but I started off walking. And I got my little Fitbit, and I walked a couple times a day. And then the next thing I knew, all of a sudden I wanted to wake up before work and go for a walk. And then just kept continuing to build on that. And then I started running, and then I started running races, and then I went into the gym. And now I can't even think of a world where that's not a part of my life. I don't want to think about a world where that's not a part of my life. So
isn't it amazing though?
Yes.
And it starts like one foot in front of the other, right? For however long you do it. And that's how you start, and you just stay with it.
Right.
And pretty soon your brain's like, hey, I want to go do this. Like you working out before work, going for that walk before work. Your brain's like, hey, get up, let's go do this. Because you know you're going to feel better.
Right.
That's how I start every day, other than after I've had surgery on my foot. But I will tell you, like, people when they also ask, like, how do you deal with all this trauma? The number one question is the best patients in the world. The number two answer is I work out every day. Like, I get up, that's how I start my day. You know, we walk the dog first. We call that family time. That's a good way to warm up, and then straight upstairs to the home gym. And to me, that's how I process everything, clear out, you know, all the cobwebs, and start the day.
Let's go. I love that. I can look at, even thinking about early in life, I didn't have any mental health issues growing up, but I was in sports and I was outside constantly. And I look at where my life went left. I was a junior in high school. I got in an accident. My basketball career was pretty much over. And when the movement stopped in my young adulthood is right where I started getting into drugs, started hanging out with the party people, wanted to be accepted, was insecure, like all this stuff, because I didn't know, now that I didn't have the movement in my life, I didn't know who I was or what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. You know, if I was your counselor at the time, I would have told you to find what the next form of movement looks like. Like maybe I would have pushed you to start swimming or to start walking or whatever, but I would have never let you stop moving. Like let's talk to your doctor. And if your doctor said, yeah, you can swim laps, I would have been like, this is your homework. Like, go get in a pool and swim. Right. Like, you know, because that's the worst thing that happens to the human psyche is we stop working out, and then you throw in alcohol or drugs, and it's the fast track to destruction, as you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how easy this would be to put into words, but what is the difference between working with clients that are in the military, that are in law enforcement, or that are other first responders like fire or EMS?
Yeah, they all come with similar issues, and then they come with their own distinct issues. It's interesting, you know, with fire, it's usually the pediatric calls. EMS is the volume of calls along with pediatric calls. Law enforcement, it's everything we talked about in terms, you know, of like society, the media, and bad calls. Our military, there's to me, military, they are probably the most challenging to work with because of the distrust of mental health, negative interactions at the VA, those kinds of things really create like a lot of angst. And with the military, the suck it up mindset is so pervasive. And, you know, if you can't handle this, you're weak, that kind of stuff. So for those guys to come in, to make that phone call and to come in, it's hard. And to build rapport, it takes a little more with veterans. You guys are highly skeptical. You test the waters a lot, which I welcome. Yeah, of course. But to me, once you have rapport with all the populations, rapport is the most important thing. Like when I hire a therapist, I sit across from them in their interview, and I look at them in terms of would I want to sit across them if I had an issue, if I needed help, right? And so once we have rapport and they feel like it's a safe place to say anything, then there's no stopping them. And everybody is so motivated to do the work. But to me, like veterans are the hardest to get in and the hardest to get rapport with initially.
Which branch?
Well, I have to say the Marine Corps. Yeah, that's the toughest one. It does help that I contracted with the 4th Marine Division for a number of years, and so and I always tell them stories like how when I first started doing like pre and post deployment briefs, they put me up in front of a bunch of 4th Marine Division guys. they if I used the wrong word, they'd be like boo, and they would throw like dry erasers at me and stuff like that. And you have to have thick skin and you have to have fun with that. And so when I tell those kinds of stories, well, they're like, well, that's kind of cool. And so, but it helps to have that experience.
It's stuff like that that I'm sure helped you build the rapport with all of them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
They wouldn't be messing with you if you weren't one of their own.
Right. Which is amazing. Yes. And one day when I was leaving after some training, they're like, don't leave. You're one of us. And I was like, oh, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. The Marines are not easy to, they don't take in outsiders.
No, they don't.
That's awesome.
I love them.
What, where do you see, so like, do you see a shift coming anywhere with how the population at large, or like the people in your field, how they're working with people and first responders? Is there like a different way, like, or is it we're just going to stay the course and keep chipping away at it?
There is a shift. I say that cautiously. First responders.
I'm curious if you're about to go down the hole I think you're going.
Yeah. First responders have become kind of the hot topic, right? And there's a lot of push from universities for like grants for first responder health and stuff like that. But these are the same universities that call police officers the oppressors. You can't have it both ways. I get emails from people in grad school who want to work with public safety, and they say, how did you do it? Because I don't think I'm going to survive this. Like, my professors hate me because I want to work with public safety. So there is a certain section of people who are coming out of grad school with the desire to do this, as long as they're not too beat up about it. And then we also have the fact that some of these clinicians think they know what they're getting into, but they really don't know what they're getting into. And, in the first book, I wrote a lot about, like, the fact that you have to ride along. You have to ride out. It's like my time with the 4th Marine Division. Like, you have to do that something. And I always talk about the importance of riding out. And when therapists reach out to me and they're like, well, how do I create a practice like yours and wherever I am in the United States, I always start with, you have to go ride along. The first thing you need to do is go get rapport, go be seen, go get on some crappy calls and see some horrible things, and understand what it's like to do that job. And a lot of them don't want to do it. And that, to me, is, I always say you have to do the work. Like, you can't skip that. And I know one of the things that our mutual friend talked about when he contributed to my upcoming 10th book is he mentioned that he knew when he came to see me that I had gone through the Austin Police Academy. And I took 6.5 months off my career. And this is extreme. I don't tell therapists to do this, but it helped a lot. Like, I cut off all my hair. I went through the academy, and I couldn't.
Really?
I couldn't graduate at the very end because I broke my wrist. And they're like, "We could recycle you," and I'm like, "No, I'm going back to my career." Right. But I will tell you that it gave me so much insight into helping police officers.
Right.
So I think there are a lot of therapists who say they work with first responders who want to do well, but what happens when you get in with the wrong therapist is the first responder starts talking about the normal day of a paramedic, and when the jaw drops and they start crying, it's over, right? And we have a lot of people who come to our practice who are like, so you're not going to be like that person who I saw that started crying, right? Because I think I ruined her life. And it's like, not at all, right? So to me, that's you have to do the work.
Right.
And it's the same with the military. While there's not a whole lot of things you can do, but you can go to a military family day. Therapists in Texas, like when Camp Mabry has an event, you can go on base and you can see, and you can start to just kind of absorb some things and get some terminology down. You can watch movies, you can read books, you can get yourself at least assimilated somehow. But if you don't do that, you have no business doing this.
Right. And if you don't ever walk a mile in their shoes, how can you ever imagine to think that you're going to help them or do any of that?
Right.
I'm definitely of the school of thought. I think all young people should do, especially men, boys, should do at least 2 years of military service.
Yeah.
And even the people that don't, you watch the news, you don't support war and stuff like that. I don't think they know oftentimes we don't support war either.
Right.
But what I do support, like you're saying how you went and you rode along and you get it, right? I'd love for everybody to Go through a couple weeks of basic training.
Mm-hmm.
Go through a couple weeks of basic training.
Mm-hmm.
Bond with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Then you all of a sudden, now you understand what camaraderie is and stuff like that.
Right.
Now you understand the notion. I may not support our country going to war or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but what I do support is I'm going to go have their back.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
I'm not letting them go without me.
Exactly.
And I wish everybody could get that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, they won't. And
They
it
don't.
doesn't appear that it's getting any better anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if people tried to do the work, like you're saying, to understand these military and first responders and stuff like that, you would have a very different outlook on what they deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my former patients was an officer involved in a shooting, and he sat down with the first therapist, and she's like, well, how do you feel about the shooting? He's like, pretty good. It was a good shoot. And she's like, you should be ashamed. And it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
You have no idea, right? It was a good shoot. Someone pointed a weapon at this officer. It was a good shoot. And she was like, you should be ashamed to feel good about that. And he's like, next, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, then what happens is they come to see us, and there's already that fear and that skepticism, and like, what's going to happen? Is the same thing going to happen here? And of course, not. But
Right.
it's damage is done
Right.
at that point. Mm-hmm.
It's funny you said that, because our mutual friend, I said the same when I watched the video footage. I said the same thing to him, a good shot and stuff like that. And I know if I would have said that publicly, and there would be people like that, and be like,
Right.
oh, did you see the restaurant of people he just saved?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
What do you mean that wasn't a good shot?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it would be like to be a first responder right now in this
Yeah.
in this climate and everything like that. It would be tough.
Yeah.
It's sad. You know, we both live in Austin, and I've talked about it before, but you drive through downtown Austin right now, and there's a huge sign that they're giving a $15,000 signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the military, when they give signing bonuses, they're giving signing bonuses to the worst jobs, the ones that nobody wants to do.
Right.
And we're in a scary and a sad state when nobody wants to be a police officer or anything like that.
Right. I'm really hoping we can write this. I'm really hoping we can.
What can we do?
Well, I think it boils down to seeing the consequences. So take Austin, for example. Like, look at the crime rate is way up. Look at
The open air drug market that's right downtown next to the police station.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was in college, we used to go down to 6th Street and party just pretty much carefree, right? And now we would never go down there. And so, yeah, look at the consequences. Look at the level, the numbers of officers quitting. Look at the response times. And, you know, it's going, when it goes out to the suburbs, I think at that point, people will wake up.
Yeah.
I think that they have all these ideals about what policing should be and all that, and then they realize violence is violence, and the only way to manage violence is you have to meet violence with violence. And so at some point, people are going to wake up and get it.
With me being in the drug and alcohol field, with what I do on a daily basis, how much does that reach over into your world with the military first responders, like substance abuse and them trying to cope with their issues?
I'd say we see about 30% of our patients have that going on. Sometimes we do have patients that have to go detox before we can start treatment, which is super scary. We work with a couple hospitals that allow us to come in to see our patients while they're in. So already there's this continuity of care, which is really great. But it's about 30% of our population. We're having some issues with that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I was floored when I originally sat down with the police department, and they started telling me some of the things that the officers are facing, and I was blown away by the amount of transparency and authenticity in what they were saying. Like, you know, we have cops that are suffering right now, and because you never think of that.
Right.
But then when you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, this is what they deal with on a daily basis. Of course they go home and drink a bottle at night.
Right.
To try to kill the pain. What else are they going to do?
Right. Exactly.
So someone that wants to come work with you, do they need to find you on their own, or is it like, or places are looking, like not companies, what am I looking
Practices
for?
or?
No, like the police department, the fire department. So are they reach out to you with okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
So you're not somebody that an individual needs to go find. You're somebody that's readily available that they can utilize through their organization.
Yeah. They usually Google me. I'm really Googleable. and they call the office and leave a message. And we have a very strong culture in terms of like customer service is like our top priority. And my referral coordinator is generally calling you back by the end of the day. If you leave a message right around 4:30, it might be the next morning, but we're calling back pretty quick to get people in. And generally the wait to get in is less than a week. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, but we try to get people in as quickly as possible. Like, we know that when people are making the call or sending the email, they've picked up the phone 100 times and they've put it down. And so we know when they make the call, it's time to go. We don't want to wait a few weeks to delay that process, because if there's ever a time to decide you don't need therapy, it's in that waiting time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I might have told you about this when we originally met, but I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast. But I can remember I was going through a breakup, and I was still in early recovery. I think it was like a year and a half sober. And it was the first time I was ever dealing with, rejection or, the loss of a partner, anything like that. And so I was bummed. I was pretty devastated by it. And I remember sitting there thinking, it was like, all right, I have these benefits at the VA. I might as well use them. So let me go in there. And I went up to the mental health desk, showed up in person and tried to get an appointment. And they're like, okay, no problem. We'll call you, we'll call you. And so I was like, okay. So I left. 2 weeks passed by, no phone call. I go back in there in person, because I'm figuring in person is going to be way easier to get an appointment than trying to call the VA. Anybody that's tried to call the VA knows how that goes.
Right.
Excuse me. So I go back in after 2 weeks. Oh, okay, no problem. Somebody, we'll call you. Another 3 weeks go by, and they still haven't seen me. Now it's been 5 weeks, right? I know enough about the VA to know when you pull up my medical records that it says 100% PTSD, anxiety, depression, all this laundry list of mental health issues that you diagnosed me with. And here, a combat veteran, I'm telling you, I need to talk to somebody. I'm going through something right now, and 5 weeks goes by.
Wow.
The one thing they don't ever talk about on the news, which I'm sure you're aware of, are the people that kill themselves in a VA all the time because they're not getting the care that they need. And so, and I'm not trying to trash the VA. I understand it's huge and they're dealing with a lot of people, but I think as of recently with, since COVID, they've gotten a little bit better about outsourcing to different ways. But thank God, something like that, I wasn't suicidal over anything. Right. But again, it makes me think about the other people who are dealing with worse stuff than a breakup.
Absolutely. And that to me is unacceptable. Like, you can't make people wait that long.
So they can call you and they get called back the next day. Yeah,
absolutely. My pet peeve is when people don't call me back. Like, I can't stand that. If I leave a message, please call me back. Right. It's like I tell, now my team is a bunch of women, and I hate to get kind of graphic, but I always say to them jokingly, okay, so if it burns when you pee, you have a UTI, you really want the nurse to call you back so she can call in your antibiotics, right? Because you're not going to survive the day or the next day. And so I just say it like that because, well, that's how we talk at the practice. But also just to kind of point out, like, if you're desperate, you're making the phone call, you want someone to call you back. So that's a pretty graphic example that I use.
I like it. Proves the point.
It does.
What was it like for you riding around with the Marines when you did?
It was amazing. I loved it. So I did, we had... Were
you in civilians or you were in uniform?
In civilians.
Okay.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so it was amazing. It was such a learning experience. It was so rich. I got to go on the simulators and I got to, like, do all the things. It was so fun.
Did you get to enjoy the comfort of a Humvee?
I did. It was fabulous. Yes.
I was just telling my wife what it's like to ride in one of those. I was like, it's the most uncomfortable thing
it really
you'll
is.
ever do.
Blackhawks too. I was really surprised.
Yep.
I'm like, wow, these are really uncomfortable.
we used to crack up when we were over in Iraq because we would get the installation I was on was the biggest installation in Iraq, and so for you to just, if we had free time for us to go over to the store, the PX or whatever, we had to get a Humvee to do it. And so you'd be sitting there and you'd be drinking a soda or whatever you went over to get, and a Humvee would pull up and like 16 soldiers would come piling out, and you're like, how did they all fit in there? Like, that's not even possible. But
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah, make it work.
So you just did all the exercises with them, or you acted as if you were one?
No, so what I did, I just ingrained myself as much as I could. So I was working with certain units, and we were doing pre- and post-deployment briefs.
Okay.
And then I went out to 29 Palms and did, it was what we call peer support training in public safety. Of course, the Marines called it subject matter experts. And those were, I trained Marines and a lot of Navy corpsmen how to help other people in terms of like psychological first aid while they're in theater.
Okay.
And so that was phenomenal. I absolutely enjoyed that. And I know that a lot of Navy corpsmen were asking me, it's like, could you teach us how to do EMDR? And I was like, I really wish I could. It would be so amazing to have that tool in the field, but of course I couldn't. But it was.
You said psychological
First aid.
So what is that?
So that's basically when let's say you're in Iraq and you look at a buddy and you know, like it's not the same, like something's not right, and you can tell they're decompensating.
Yeah.
What I would do is I would train other military members how to sit down with that person to figure out what's going on and to help them restore their resilience.
Really?
So yeah, and we do this with public safety now too. We call it peer support. So something's going on, whether it's personal or professional, and the peers are trained, and the whole peer support concept is designed to sit down with that person on a peer level to listen without judgment, without interrupting, and to help them figure out what they need to do, basically to empower themselves to get through the situation. It's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. I'm surprised that the military would even bring somebody in to do that.
Yeah, well, the command of the 4th Marine Division, wanted it, so that's
Shout
yeah.
out to him.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Him or her, whichever.
Yeah. He was pretty forward thinking.
That's awesome. What your new book? What is the new book centered around?
So it's my 10th book, and it's called Warrior Healer, and it is about the most impactful patients I've had in my career. So it's law enforcement, fire, EMS, communications, and a retiree, and basically it's the ones who I think were the most challenging and the hardest in their own ways. And so, and also a veteran, also that's the 6th one. And it is, they tell their story and I tell what it was like to be their therapist. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah, and it's, I've done a lot of books about care and treatment and therapy. And this one's more like the 6 most impactful people and what the behind the scenes was like for me. Basically, what it's like sometimes to be their therapist and be like, oh shit, well, here we go, right? And the challenges in treating them. And so they tell their story, and I talk about my sort of my role in their life and what it was like to go through that process.
Where did you get the idea for this book?
The ideas just pop in my head. So, yeah, I wrote a book called Code 4, which is about resilience. And I joke, we had a hard landing on American Airlines in Phoenix. Like, we hit the runway real hard. And I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book about resilience.
Really?
So it's just kind of random how it happens. But I think I was, number 10. It's kind of a special number. And I wanted just to make it just raw, and it is really raw. I joke that Amazon should sell this book with a box of tissues because it's raw, and everybody who reads it has been sort of caught in a moment. It's one or two patients, and they're like, ugh. And so I just figured it would be a good read for other first responders and veterans to be like, wow, if you did it, I can do it. Because the challenges that these people had were huge, massive. Like our mutual friend, like, wow. And so the challenges are so difficult. What they submitted was so honest and raw, and my response was completely like transparent. And and I talk about like, worries and sort of taking it home at night and wondering if my client's going to end up in prison. And so, those types of things. And so I figured it would help people get help, and it would maybe help some therapists realize maybe the level of customer service they need to start to provide.
Right. That's awesome. I'm excited. It comes out when?
Thank you. January 2nd.
January 2nd, available on Amazon?
Yeah. And wherever books are sold online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
How do you have the patience to write a book?
So I don't have a lot. I block days and I sit down and just crank it out.
Really?
Like I'm not one of those people who can write 20 minutes at night and call it good. Like once I start, I got to keep going. And like I'm obsessed. So it's kind of like get up, work out, take a shower, get upstairs, start writing, keep writing, take a break, and I really don't enjoy writing. I don't feel like I'm a good writer. My editor says I am, but I just basically crank it out and get it out, and then I edit it, and then she edits it a lot, and I really don't. So I take like 40 weekends and just block it off and get them done.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's a lot.
I've had people pushing me to do a book, and I'm just like, I don't even like reading emails, let alone sitting down and writing all that stuff. There's something about a computer and me doing it. It just immediately overwhelms me.
You know, that was my first one. I was really like, I don't think I can do this, and how do I start? And and then we went down to Fort Lauderdale. There was an active shooter in the airport there, and we did this 7-day response for the law enforcement folks who were involved in that. And the director of the International Association of Chiefs of Police heard what I did down there, and he referred to it as best practice. And I was like, well, there you go. I'm going to write a book. And so just his words were, that's like the golden egg in my world. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to write this book. And then it came out, and people were like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And, and people have, shared it and talked about it and sent, beautiful emails saying how great and how much it saved their life. And when you get that, like number 2 and number 3 and number 4, they're easy, Yeah. So
now you put it like
I know,
that,
I
it
know.
makes me feel guilty.
Well, yeah. Now you got to do it, right?
Yeah, I gotta do it.
Yeah.
What I don't know if you can. I mean, so obviously your clients were open enough to share their stories for the books and stuff like that. Now you don't have to use names or anything like that, but could you tell us maybe one inspirational story out of one of the people you've worked with?
Absolutely. So, well, they're all really inspirational. Like,
right.
Ooh, yeah.
First one that comes to mind. No slight on anybody she's not.
Yeah,
mentioned.
yeah. The first one that comes to mind is he's a medically retired police officer. He's called Mike the Retiree. That's his chapter. Okay. And he was in 4 shootings, had a ton of critical incidents besides the shootings, had zero help, a climate where they just didn't know what to do, and he honestly scared the shit out of me. Like, I thought, and he said, if I don't make it to 50, I'm all right. He's like, I'm not going to kill myself, but if I don't make it to 50, I'm all right. And I was like, when is 50? It's May, and next May. And I'm like, and so he's come so far. And the first line of his chapter is, I think I'm going to be okay. And it's like, oh man, like you can't beat that. Like he's done so much hard work. He had therapists who failed him, and he's been through hell. And to me, it's like, it's so amazing. And he's such a kind, sweet person. And you meet him in person, and it's like, oh man, So that comes to mind. Tracy, my communications person, she was my first dispatcher I ever worked with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she did great. She's the first person I did progressive desensitization, which is after we do the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, we go out, sometimes if it's possible, we go out to the scene where it happened, or if it's an officer involved in a shooting, we go out to the range and fire that weapon. And she was the first person I did progressive desensitization on. We went back to the scene where her trauma happened. And I was like, internally, I'm like, I really hope this works. And it did. Really? It's amazing. Yeah. So, but the book, it's very hard. They're all amazing. All 6 of them are amazing.
I bet. I'm excited to read it.
Thank you.
So with your journey of being a doctor, a therapist, and everything like that, have you had like a professionally, like we'll say like a rock bottom moment where maybe one of your clients was so heavy where it just kind of had you questioning your future in the field or what you were doing or anything like that? Have you had that?
Yeah. I had a moment. It was when I went to Brooke Army Medical Center with the Marines and soldiers who were burned. And I did a stint down there, and I walked in, and there you read the stories and you hear the news, and then you walk in and you see the reality. And and I'd worked 10 years in an ER, and I'd seen burn patients, but I had a moment, and I was with this colonel was introducing me to the program there and all the stuff I was going to be doing, and I was like, I need to go outside. And he goes, you okay? And I was like, oh, not really, And so I'm out in the parking lot, and I'm pacing, and I've got my hands on my knees, like I'm going to throw up, but I don't want to throw up. I just couldn't catch my breath. And he's like, you okay? And I said, not really. And I go, I need to speak to the president. And he goes, the president? I was like, yeah. President Bush? He goes, and I said, yeah. And he said, I don't really think I can make that happen. He's like, why do you want to speak to the president? I said, because this isn't working. Like, these are our sons and daughters. Like, this isn't working.
Right.
I can't do this. And he looked at me and he goes, Tania, there's a lot of people in there that need your talent and your gifts, and they're relying on you, and they're ready for you. So whatever it is you need to do, whatever you need to find inside of yourself, I need you to do that. And I was like, and I'm back, right? Yeah. And and I've never felt so overwhelmed like I had to step out except for there. And his words in his own way was he was telling me to suck it up and get back in there in his Marine Corps colonel way, and he did a really good job of like pointing out the fact that there are people and they're relying on you. And I'm like, I'm in. So, and of course you get in and you get used to it and you do all the good work and you see all the good things happening. What I loved about that time is there was one Marine and he healed the fastest out of everybody. And the reason is because his dad brought his horse down from Oklahoma and he would trailer the horse into the parking lot at BAMC every morning. And he would get his son outside and be like, get on the horse. And initially he's like, Dad, I can't, I'm burned, here in my thighs and I can't stretch. And he'd be like, get on your horse. Well, one day he got his foot in the stirrup and then he eventually got on his horse. And of course they're all like, oh, germs. And, we really can't do this because he's, it's a horse and germs. The medical staff is freaking out. He healed the fastest. He discharged the fastest. Yeah. I know. It's like movement and exercise in animals and like all the things that, sometimes the medical system forgets about, I think are so important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So speaking of movement, you and I had an interesting conversation when we had first met and we were talking about addiction and movement and stuff like that. And I think you and I share the same view on the importance of somebody with those characteristics and traits finding something that could be, there was a lot of people, and I've talked about it 100 times, but a lot of people that told me I was substituting one addiction for another with the running. At the end of the day, my only answer to them was, if you're going to try to tell me that this activity that I found that's putting purpose back into my life, that's lit a fire up under my ass, that makes me excited to be alive, excited to be sober, and has put me in touch with the greatest group of people I've ever met in my life, if you're going to try to tell me that's bad, I don't know if we can continue to have this conversation. But the one thing I will say openly, and it's not, I guess can be considered controversial in the recovery community, is all the energy I used to put into getting high every day, I still had in sobriety, now newly sober. I needed somewhere to channel that. Mm-hmm. Thank God I found running. Thank God I found the gym, because I don't know where it would have manifested otherwise. Mm-hmm. What's your view as far as all that goes?
I completely agree with you. I think that human suffering is awful, and I think that whatever works, we do it. For you, it was trading one for the other. And I've had a lot of clients where their ending point in terms of their healing is they have traded one thing for another. And I don't see that as a bad thing. People will say, oh, you're avoiding, you need to sit with this pain. Well, how much do we tolerate, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like when people are grieving, right? And they say, well, my other therapist told me that if I get busy or get distracted, I'm avoiding. It's like, no, grief is hitting you when it's going to hit you, and it's coming anyway. It's still going to hit you. But sometimes that distraction gives you a break. Mm-hmm. And why do we need to power through all this pain all at once when we can figure out things that work for us? For you, trading your addiction for running, to me, is a total win. And I would never, ever say you're avoiding or you're not dealing or you faced your addiction head on, mm-hmm. right? And what you realized is that you are a person with energy that you need to push in a direction that's productive and positive, right? Yeah. I tell people after trauma, there's a lot of anger. And I tell them all the time, anger can destroy your life. It can destroy your marriage. It can destroy your career. Or you take it and you push it in a direction that's productive and positive. And I tell them, have the best arms and abs you've ever had because you are that freaking mad, right? And so what we do is we do trade some things, and that's okay. And that's all right. I did it. In college, I was struggling with, some things going on in my life and some pressure that I was under. And I got myself down to 92 pounds and figured out I had an eating disorder. And I went to a really crappy therapist who was awful. And then I went to a dietitian. And she started to talk about, well, if you add this food, then you can exercise. And then if you add this many calories, then you can do this much exercise. And that's what got me through. Mm-hmm. That's what I've done my entire career, right? When my brain creeps back to the whole counting calories thing, I know that tomorrow I'm going to get on my treadmill or I'm going to get on my elliptical, and that's how I clear it out. And then my brain stops doing that, right? Yeah. So I think we all spend our lives doing the best that we can, and if trading one for the other is the best we can get to, then so be it, right? Because I want you to be the kind of person who's like, how many years do I have now sober? It's like 18, 19. I want that versus I have 18 years, 6 months, 22 days and 14 hours, but who's counting, right? Because that to me means you're stuck and you're not happy and you're struggling.
That's your identity right there.
Yeah,
Your identity now is being sober.
Right.
Which, if that works for you, it's cool.
Right.
There's, luckily the times are changing and there's more different methods of things, before it was only the 12-step route and stuff like that. And I will admit, my early running stuff, it was substituting one addiction for another, but I needed to dive headfirst into something that I loved and enjoyed.
Right.
Because that's what kept happening for me is I would get into recovery and I would just stick myself in the recovery bubble. But there was never, how often do you enjoy going to meetings every day and stuff like that? You have to find enjoyment out of life. Now I'm sober and there's this whole new world that I haven't done anything in. I've been locked up in an apartment, apartment room the entire time shooting dope.
Yeah.
And so now getting out experience in life, finding something I'm excited about, it was absolutely life-changing.
Absolutely.
I just had a conversation with a client that's at one of the facilities I work with, and he's going through some heartbreak. And every time I talk to him, he brings up this girl. And he hates her one day, loves her the next. She's the worst person ever. She's the best person ever, this and that. And I told him, I was like, man, look, I'll tell you, my life changed when you can't find your worth in anybody else.
Right.
You can only find it in yourself.
Absolutely.
Now you need to start giving yourself stuff to be proud of, stuff to help grow your confidence. And so he started running, he started into the gym, and then I see it starting to make a difference with him, but then he goes back to the girl part. And I was like, man, like everything you've told me about this girl, she's told you everything you needed to hear, right?
Right.
It's not the one, it's not healthy, it's not working out. Right? Now what I did, and this is just my avenue of dealing with things, is when I got my heart broke and I felt like I was a piece of shit and I wasn't worth anything, I went and I dove headfirst into the gym and I didn't come out until I had confidence. I knew when I walked into a room, people looked at me different, they interacted with me different. That's what gave me my confidence back. And so I was like, if I was you, man, I would keep your head down for the next 6 months, keep my ass in the gym, and I would come out of here a beast.
Right.
Guess what? That girl sees you, she's gonna be like, damn, I missed out.
Yeah. And when he sees her, he'll be like, I'm good. Yeah.
I'm good. You didn't want me at my worst. Of course you want me at my best now.
Exactly.
And so it sounds silly, like it's some game or something like that, but
it's not.
That's just the way my mind worked. And I told him, I was like, this one thing that's going on with you right now, you think is going to be the end of your world. I look back when I thought the same thing, and that was probably one of the most important things that ever happened to me. She broke my heart, and it pushed me into being a completely different person.
Absolutely.
That was the fuel that I needed to get there.
Absolutely. That's why I ran my first marathon. Bad breakup. All right, I'm 30. I'm running the first marathon. 10 marathons later.
Is it?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I really enjoyed your documentary. It was a family event over Thanksgiving.
Really?
We all enjoyed it. Yes, very much so. And I really love the point. Well, I love how it shows, your family and the interviews with your sister and your mom. Amazing. And I love 2 points in that race. It's when you thought you couldn't do it, and then the next segment that you got to, the next station, the rehab station, you're like, oh no, I got it. It's amazing, right? Yeah, that's every marathon for me. For me, it was a 10-mile mark because, like, you're already sweaty and tired and hot, and
that 10-mile wall is a thing.
Yeah, and you still have 16 to go, and you're like, well, I'm not even halfway done. And then you get to the 13 and a half marathoners peel off, and you're like, why am I so stupid that I'm running 26?
Right.
And then you go. And then I hit 18, and for me, like, it's all like downhill from there. I love that scene where you thought you couldn't do it, and then your brain switched on and you knew you could. And then I love, of course, the finish line when your sister and mom were there. I was like,
Spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Sorry.
it's all right.
Well, we can edit that out.
It's all right. It's still, even if you know it's coming, it's still.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I've traveled around now for years and spoke with a documentary, and it's wild how a different part of the film will hit me every time, and I still get all teary-eyed and everything like that. But thank you guys for guys for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't mean to spoil that one.
You're good. If they haven't seen it by now.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions from the doc? From seeing it? Did you or your family, like, were they asking you questions or anything?
They were impressed. They were, there was a lot of wows, a lot of wows, and just your whole story. And when we were finished, everybody was like 2 thumbs up. Like, it was great. Yeah.
It's humbling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love it. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's very odd that all happened to me in life. But that's what showed me right there. up to that point, like I'd been of the AA mindset where it's like you're a sponsor, you have sponsees, you work one-on-one, you go to a meeting. That's when I started seeing like, oh, wait a minute, like you can help people on a large scale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it's still impactful to sit down with one, but I can also stand in front of a room of 20, 30, 50, 100 and be able to somehow be able to impact all of them too. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
love doing it.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's such an honor to help
is.
people, right? And when people reach out and they say things like the words you said saved my life, it's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
When I first started getting messages from people in other countries, I was just like,
What?
who are they messaging me?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and oftentimes a lot of the stuff what people are writing in about has nothing to do with anything that happened to me. It's something completely different. It's just the fact that you are willing to be open and vulnerable and talk about your stuff that makes the floodgates open for everybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's no higher honor than
No,
helping others.
It's not. It's what gave true value to my life. You know, work is no longer work. I don't know about you, but like I don't ever have days where it's like, oh, gotta go to work tomorrow. When I was doing a 9 to 5 and stuff like that, that's when I'd have that. But I get to talk to cool ass people every day who are just as messed up in the head as I am, and we work through it together. And I don't know, it's just it's fun.
It is. I love every day that I go to work. It's a calling. It really is. Yeah.
What do you travel around and do speaking and stuff with the books and the
I do.
documentaries?
Yeah, I do a lot of keynotes at conferences, and we do a lot of peer support training, and and we do a class called Trauma and Resilience, especially that's directed towards law enforcement, fire, EMS, and so we do a lot of those things. I travel almost every week, not all week every week, but we're on the road quite a bit, and I have two road warriors, soon to be 3, at the practice who are running and gunning too. It's pretty amazing.
You call them road warriors?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You guys had so many of your guys' staff pictures. You guys all had like, I'm trying to think what you guys had on.
Those blue polos?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. We made like an opening commercial. It's on our website. So when you go to the website, that's what opens up. And we had public safety represented. We had a veteran. And at the end, the closing message is with myself and Dakota Meyer. So yeah, super fun. Yeah.
Love to meet him.
Okay, yes, you will meet him.
All right. So we've talked about the people that you help, your books coming out. Towards the end, I kind of like to spice it up and make things fun. So I was curious if I could just throw out some terms to you, and you just tell me first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. God.
Purpose.
Good one. United States of America.
God bless America.
It's 50-50, whatever answer I'm going to get for that one.
I love America.
Me too.
That's the first thing. Like love. I'd say love.
Good. Running.
Salvation.
It is. Are you a meditator? You do sit down and meditate?
Well, I meditate when I run and when I work
That's
out.
my meditation.
Yeah.
I've never been good at like quieting the mind and doing all that, but my mind quiets when I run.
Absolutely.
That's when thoughts go away and I could just clear my head.
Yep.
But if I want to think about something, I think about it in a totally different way as if I did just sitting there doing it. I'm always able to work my problems out better, have a clear mindset on a hot topic or whatever like that after a run. Best medicine ever.
Absolutely.
Vegans.
No.
Not for you?
Not for me.
Not your thing?
Not my thing.
The gym.
Salvation again.
Salvation.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do in the gym? Favorite exercise? How to pick one?
So if I had to pick one, I love the elliptical and I love the treadmill.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the weights too, but to me it's the aerobics that is my favorite.
They hit different.
They do.
What do you do weights wise? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, just biceps, triceps, curls. Just get in. I just kind of play around with that. I didn't really do too much with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I asked that one already. Marine Corps.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. Good one. Good one. The Navy.
Navy corpsman. That's the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think of the Navy, is because of all my good experiences with the corpsman.
Air Force.
Chair Force.
Oh, you took it respectful and you interact with the Air Force.
I'm sorry.
That's why when everybody asks, because I served in the Air Force and the Army. Everybody asks, I just say Army because I know the Air Force jokes.
Yeah.
Much more proud of my time I did in the Army. But my job was way harder in the Air Force mentally.
Yeah.
Right, last one, Army.
Soldier.
Soldier?
That's the first thing that comes to mind, soldier.
Which, what was the nicest military base you've ever been to?
Wow. The nicest.
Has to be an Air Force.
It has to be Air Force. Yeah. Where was I? In Colorado Springs?
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever base that is. It was very civilized.
Very civilized.
Yes. It's called the dining hall, not the chow hall. I learned.
Yeah.
See, yeah. It's an Air Force thing. It's terminology. Yeah.
What's the store called on the Air Force base?
The PX? The Post? What? I don't know.
Post is Army.
I don't know.
Base.
The
BX.
Oh, the BX,
Yeah.
the base, right? The BX.
And the Navy calls it NEX or
And
something
some
like
like MEX.
NEX?
Yeah, some.
I don't know, something that's not right.
That's right, the BX. It's been a while since I've been on Air Force Base.
Right.
Yeah, the worst one was 29 Palms.
I bet.
Woo!
Marine Corps. What's a guilty pleasure of yours? A food or
Netflix.
Netflix?
Yeah.
What's your show? What do you watch?
Well, we've watched a lot. I like Breaking Bad was a good one.
Okay.
Really enjoyed that. I like the crazy, like over the top, just
too.
the ones that end and you don't want to end, but you really got to go to bed. Yeah.
Have you watched that new one out called Bad Surgeon?
Yes, I watched that 2 weekends ago. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. Crazy.
Have you seen Dr. Death?
I have. Yes. I watched that on a flight. Yeah. Crazy. Horrible.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
I know. It makes. I know.
I was in the sauna in the gym, and there was a guy who does, I forget what Dr. Death, he was I forget what type of surgeon he
Orthopedic?
was. Was it
I
orthopedic?
think so.
No, what's the...
Yeah.
It works on the brain.
The cranial.
I forget what, do you remember, Jason?
That's right.
He did
Right,
brain
he did the brain
surgery on people and
surgeries, right?
stuff, and then made his best friend a paraplegic and all this stuff. And so I was in there in the sauna with this doctor. We're sitting there talking, and he told me what he did. And I was like, "Oh, have you ever seen Dr. Death?" And I didn't think of it until after. I'm like, I bring up like the shittiest thing, the one shittiest thing that's ever happened in this profession, and that's my reference to him after he tells me what he does. Not the amazing things they do and say. I want to talk about the one fucked up guy you guys had in your old field.
And he's like,
Yeah, I don't remember him being too keen on answering the question either.
Yeah.
He wanted to highlight more of what he was doing, so I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you for driving. Thank you enough for driving down here
Honored
and
to be
taking the
here.
time.
Thank you.
You were absolutely amazing. Your book, one last time, is called
Warrior
Healer,
Healer.
and it's coming out on
January
January
2nd.
All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll
Thank you.
throw a plug in there for it. Make
Thank
sure we have a
you.
link.
Thank you.
The one thing we like to do to end the podcast is it's called the I Am Redemption podcast. So if you'd be willing to take a look in your camera and let the people know who you are.